We're spending more on paying off government debt than we are on national defense or Medicare, and the gap is growing. Today, we talk with one of the nation's biggest debt fighters, former Governor and U.S. Senator Bob Kerrey. This former Navy SEAL, a Bronze Medal and Purple Heart recipient, has joined forces with Senator Jack Danforth to force Congress on both sides of the aisle to stop the nation's debt from ending the American dream. And if you know anything about Bob Kerrey, he won't stop until the job is done. From Ballard Studios in Washington, D.C., another special edition of 13th and Park.
We give you information, not a panic attack.
I mean, look what's going on. I mean, my God.
This was it. My kids were gonna die.
That time is gone forever.
This is the biggest story in America.
We weren't prepared for this.
Don't you want to speak truth to power?
Toughest thing I ever had to do.
Well, Bob, great to have you on the show. I wanted to say up front, this is going to certainly age me. I remember Terms of Endearment, that incredible movie from years ago with Deborah Winger and Shirley MacLaine, the Bob Brooks special. And I know at one point you were dating Deborah Winger and had all of America talking about it until she came out and said she'd rather not live in an aquarium. Those were heady days. A lot of people in America were talking about you for things that went well beyond, at that point, you serving as governor of Nebraska.
Yeah, well, that's what it is, a celebrity. I mean, on a much smaller scale from other celebrities. It was an unusual moment, but it was a good moment. And we were in love, and what's wrong with that?
And the movie was at least partly being filmed in Lincoln, wasn't it?
That's how we met. My chief of staff came into my office and said, they're making a movie here. And they're doing a press conference. Would you go to the press conference? And all I knew was I wanted to meet Jack Nicholson. So I went to the press conference, got that done. You know, the rest, as they say, is history. It was fun.
So I've got to ask you the question of the moment. I'm going to play you a clip where you were talking about the Joe Biden decision, we'll call it, a couple days ago. Get your feeling about where you are today.
So you don't think President Biden at this point should step aside?
No, you can't talk people into not running. Once they're in, it's a fool's mission. He's the one that decided that I want to run for president again. And he's the only one that can decide that he is or isn't going to run.
So, Bob, let me ask you this. You've run for president before. The record will show you carried South Dakota, but you were very much a factor in that race until a little-known person by the name of Bill Clinton worked his way through that primary and then ultimately into the presidency. So you've been there in terms of running for president. Joe Biden has served this country in elective office for over 50 years, but it's a tough decision that he now has, as it seems like more and more of not only the political universe, but others around the country are asking the same question about whether or not it's time for him to step back.
Well, there's much more at stake than most of the races. It's not like he's running against an ordinary human being. He's running against Donald Trump. And they worry after that debate that, oh my God, that's the one thing that could change his campaign. And it didn't just change it a little, it changed it a lot. You can't really call it, I mean, it's not right to call it a bad day. It was evidence of something else. And I think he can win. I think he can serve for 4 years. Far be it for me to predict he's going to not be able to serve 4 years. I mean, you never know. I've had good friends go to bed at my age and don't wake up. So, he's got some challenges that come with being 81 years old. I think he's got to continue to talk to us about that. When he got up in North Carolina and said, I'm having trouble walking. I don't do as, I'm not as good in a debate format as I used to be. He acknowledged that age has affected him. And up to that moment, his answer is, it doesn't affect me. I can still do 40 push-ups. Doesn't matter.
But the more that I think the country is focused on this one piece, the less they're listening to everything else, right, Bob? The less they're hearing about his record in Bidenomics, reproductive health rights, climate change, his case against Donald Trump. It seems like it's all being drowned out by this drumbeat of, can he, not will he or won't he, can he serve again?
That's absolutely true. He and his staff, they had to know that debate was crucial. He's got to stop getting angry at the people he's going to need to support him. Challenge me at the convention. That doesn't help him win support of people who have to decide, not to, am I going to support you, but I'm going to get up in 18 weeks and go vote. It's not fair that that Trump doesn't get the same standard of comparison, but life isn't fair and politics is even less fair. It's a very difficult decision. It sounds like he's made it and nobody's going to talk him into getting out of this race. The only people that are going to talk him into getting out of the race are he and his wife and a couple of very, very close friends.
So let me ask you, you've never been shy about expressing your opinion. You now are a major part of the Concord Coalition. I remember back when it was first founded, right, by former Senator Paul Tsongas and Warren Rudman, Pete Peterson, all concerned about one thing, the national debt. Can we actually do something about this? And if so, what? Because it seems like we talk about this all the time and we're getting nowhere.
George Herbert Walker Bush, after saying no new taxes, read my lips, negotiated with the Democrats for spending caps and a relatively minor, it's embarrassing, and people were upset about it, a tax increase. It probably cost him the presidency. We amended it in 93. The Republicans went crazy. We didn't have a single Republican vote for the darn thing, I think, in either the House or the Senate. And then the House and the Senate went Republican in the 94 election. And in 97, we amended what was basically the law that Bush had passed in 90, that Clinton got amended in 93. We amended it again. And by the end of the decade, we were paying off debt. That's not political spin. It's not BS. It actually happened. We weren't trying to pay off all our debt. We just want to get to a position where we're paying off some, where we weren't borrowing to buy the things that we wanted the government to deliver to the American people. So can it be done? Yes.
So I think the numbers the CPO just showed that we're going to be spending more on the national debt than we are on national defense, on Medicare. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a huge and growing number, right?
Yeah, you borrow money, you got to pay it back, or you devalue your currency. And we've never done that before. The largest item in the federal budget today is interest on our debt. And all the guys worried about China, China's got about $1 billion of our debt. So at what point do you start paying it off? The Republicans in particular have a hard time because, they want to get rid of all of it. Any moment we have to raise the debt ceiling, they make it into the biggest issue in the world. So the political environment doesn't lend itself to getting this done. That's unquestionably true. All I can say is we did it in the 1990s. Republicans and Democrats argued and fought, and George Bush lost his presidency, but we got it done. And Clinton cared about it. Clinton campaigned on it. He supported the 93 legislation. I was the last guy to vote for the darn thing, but it worked. It absolutely worked.
But it's going to take, according to many experts, higher taxes and less spending.
Talk to the guys on the subways here in New York and give them the numbers, and they'll say, oh, that's easy to solve. Just raise a little more revenue and cut some spending. It's not that difficult to figure out. Lyndon Johnson in 1964, setting up the Great Society, in my view, he submitted a budget to Congress and spent less than the previous year. He submitted a budget to the Congress where the federal workforce was shrunk. He submitted a bill to Congress that cut income taxes for individuals and corporations. So, yeah, is it going to take Democrats doing things that they'd rather not do and Republicans doing things they'd rather not do? I got it. I mean, how many of us celebrated and cried on the 6th of June watching these old men show up in Normandy? Those men were heroes, not because they did something selfish. They knew the possibility after hitting the beach was they weren't going to come back. And they did it anyway. And if you don't think that way, you're not willing to act that way. Well, don't say you live in a great country. You live in a great country that somebody gave to you. This is not like a cure for cancer. This is not like me running a marathon. It's definitely doable. We just got to do it.
How are we doing overseas, we being America?
In a way, I can say I live in a foreign country because I live in New York City, but I'm not overseas. I would be shocked if significant numbers of people overseas, number one, are dealing with the same problems we are. Liberal democracies are moving against immigration. So a lot of the things that we're dealing with are being dealt in liberal democracies all around the world. What's going to happen at the NATO conference, I'm not sure. I mean, imagine how hard it would be to be Zelensky these days. Yeah. He's sitting over there in Ukraine. What does he say? He's got one guy saying, oh, I'll just go talk to Putin and we'll end this thing in 24 hours. And he knows that you're going to end that by basically giving Putin everything he wants. And you've got all of NATO and beyond NATO, liberal democracies that have been supporting, defending Ukraine against an invasion. So I think there's just a lot of insecurity, and I think we're adding to it.
Let's talk about America's veterans. Are they getting a fair shake right now from the American government, from the American people in terms of support for their health care benefits, support for jobs, support for their families?
I think we're trying. I think there's pretty strong bipartisan support. The job thing is hard. It's hard everywhere. I'm an advocate of doing a reverse boot camp and putting people through that men and women have gone in the military, that are in the military, putting them through a reverse boot camp so they learn what it means to be a civilian. How do you act as a civilian? There's nobody telling you what to wear in the morning. There's nobody telling you where you're going to go, making all the critical decisions of your life for you. All of a sudden, you get your DD 214 and you're out. I mean, I remember that. I remember I was in the Philadelphia Naval Hospital. I was discharged on December 1, and I was discharged from the military on the same date. And, I got a plane to Omaha and then hitchhiked back to Lincoln. So there's a big transition to go from civilian to military, and an equally big one to go from the military to civilian. It's a lot more than telling people, thank you for your service. I mean, I think we've got to acknowledge that they've got serious problems. I mean, I'm former military, but I don't really think former military. I think as a civilian, and it's easy to forget. I know I'm just demonstrating what a windbag I am by going on, but told before we went on air, I'm having surgery it's called osseointegration for my leg that was damaged back in 1969 on 15 March. And I went to Walter Reed, wheel around those halls and talk to people that are there, talk to the people that are taking care of people. And it's hard not to be grateful. It's hard not to sincerely and genuinely thank them for all they're doing. The guy that I knew invited me down before, and he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he was working on how do you repair human bodies that have been basically shattered by high explosives. So the motivation and of service in the military is right there before us. In a special situation, I've been go to Walter Reed and see it, but it's there.
There's something I'm sure you're familiar with called the Four Country Caucus, which is over 30 members of Congress. They are equally divided, Republican and Democrat, but also equally united in trying to find common ground. That's a rare kind of storyline in a country right now that seems to be rife with polarization. Do you have any sense of confidence or optimism that we can somehow find our way back to that common ground that unites us?
Again, it's simple. Phil Gramm was in the Senate when I was there. Phil's a very conservative Republican from Texas. And after the 94 election, which I managed to win, 94 was a tough year if you're a Democrat. And he came in and he said, I'd like to talk to you. And I said, why is that? And he said, I presume you think I'm an asshole. Yeah, I think all evidence would indicate that that's the case. And we worked together. And a better example is when Chuck Hagel came in, when he was elected in 98, I called him up and we got together and we made a list. Here's all the issues that are going to face us. And about a third of them, we're going to disagree. And the rest of them, we aren't. And let's work together. Let's demonstrate that we like each other, that we respect each other's views, and we can work together. It has to occur on that level, but it's happening.
Well, you once said, unexpected kindness is the most powerful, least costly, and most underrated agent of human change. Do you think we need a little more kindness in the formula here in America?
Yeah. Yes. And it's not soft. It's not, oh God, he's a wuss. He's talking about kindness. What's that going to get you? It gets you a lot. Actually, if you get it on the receiving end, you know what it means. It's a powerful force. And it doesn't take much. You get discouraged behaving that way, thanks to social media. Social media gives us tremendous access to things we didn't have before. But my God, and I'm not reliable on this because every day that I was in office is before Google, Facebook, Twitter, all of them. Anytime I want to persuade my children that I'm old, which is not often, I say, I was born before Google.
They look at you, right. You must be nuts, right. Was there such a time? Yes.
Was there such a time? Right.
So you're one of those rare people that has traversed across all sorts of fields, from the military to elective office to business and academia. Do you think having all four of those pieces kind of in your experience belt has really served you well and given you a broader, maybe more seasoned perspective on maybe what we need to do as a country to move forward?
I think so. Although the most important thing that happens to me on a regular basis, I realize how stupid I am, how things that I should have known that I don't. So I'd put humility right up there with important human values. The former head of the Navy Special Warfare Group became a very, very good friend of mine. And in these last year or so that it was there, he completely rewrote the curriculum for SEAL team training. And it included teaching people how to be humble, teaching humility. Humility can be taught, and it's powerful. It allows you to try to find common ground rather than, persuading people you're the smartest guy in the world. I mean, I meant it seriously. I'm not afraid of learning things I don't know. I'm just startled how much there is.
If you could go back,
Yeah.
okay, think of one thing, Bob, you might have done differently, and probably many things we all do differently. One thing in particular that maybe stands out in your experience of life that, gosh darn it, if I could go back, I might have done that a little differently.
One dinner that I had with Deborah Winger that I like to do. I'm kidding. I don't have anything quite that simple. I don't think it's possible. I certainly don't think it's desirable not to have any regrets. I just think you got to be careful not to get sucked down into feeling sorry for yourself. I went to high school, an all-white school, and I really didn't understand slavery. I didn't understand Reconstruction. I didn't understand the real battle that occurred to get the Civil Rights and Voting Rights and Housing Act and done. And now I do. I didn't really understand it when I was in the Senate. I certainly didn't understand it when I became governor, but I do now. I understand it more. And that's not the only one. I mean, there's plenty of moments where I just didn't know. Dave Carnes was a Republican senator in 1988.
I remember.
He and I were campaigning on the Cold War. Should we build the MX missile? That's what we were talking about. And the campaign ends, and 1989 rolls along, and all of a sudden, Cold War's over. And I had to learn the difference between Shia and Sunni. And I'm not sure I still understand the difference, but that's what I had to do as we teed up the Gulf War in 1991. So, things change. There are many times I went to the floor and I was 100% confident, but there were just as many I went to the floor on a vote and I was 51% confident. I vote aye. On Wednesday, I get up and said, oh my God, I should have voted no, or vice versa.
Right.
You can't get it right all the time. You just have to believe that the most important thing is stay in the game. I don't know, you probably have heard or maybe even said it that Washington, D.C. is broken. It's not broken. You can't break Washington, D.C. I can break this cup, but I can't. Washington, D.C. is a set of rules.
Right.
And it depends on people getting up and saying, I'm going to try. I'm going to learn. I'm going to work with people and try to make the country more perfect. That's what it is.
Your work with Jack Danforth, who I have incredible admiration for, both of you are cut from the same cloth, which is do it right and get it done. We wish you the best with the Concord Coalition, and trying to get this debt under control, and keep spreading the message about how we pull together, because America is a very tough player when we are together, but when we're not, all sorts of things could happen on our watch that none of us want to have happen.
That's absolutely true. Plenty of evidence for that. Well, invite me back on again. This has been fun.
Fun for us too, Bob. You take care of yourself.